Welcome back to the deep dive. You ready to fire up the Traeger?
Always ready for some smoke.
Perfect. Because today we're diving deep into 7 must-try Traeger recipes, all featured in Cooker Diary's latest blog post.
Which dropped, like, yesterday.
Talk about hot off the presses, right? Traeger recipes. 7 must-try Traeger recipes, they call it. And let me tell you, just glancing at these recipes has my mouth watering already. I don't know about you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm with you there. There's just something about that wood-fired flavor, you know? Transforms ordinary food into something, well, magical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the best part is, you don't have to be some kind of grill master to get amazing results with the Traeger.
Right. That's the beauty of it.
So today, we'll break down each of these recipes, highlight the things that make them special, and maybe share a few tips along the way. Think of us as your Traeger guides.
Your smoky Sherpas leading you to Flavor Town.
Love it. But before we get into all that, let's quickly run through the contenders, shall we? We've got smoked brisket, smoked chicken wings, smoked salmon.
Don't forget the smoked pulled pork, those smoked baby back ribs.
No, and how could I forget the smoked mac and cheese? Now that's a side dish I can get behind.
Seriously. And for dessert, they've even got a recipe for smoked apple pie.
Smoked apple pie. I'm intrigued, but skeptical.
Hey, that's what makes this so fun, stepping outside that comfort zone. But don't worry, if you want the full recipes with all the details, they're over at Cooker Diary. We're just here to give you a taste.
Literally. Okay, let's kick things off with that smoked brisket. Cooker Diary calls it classic smoked brisket for a reason, right?
Oh, absolutely. This one's all about mastering the low and slow smoke, infusing the meat with that incredible depth of flavor. And then the braising liquid, it just takes it to a whole other level of tenderness.
Now, when you say braising, are we talking about the Texas crutch method or something else?
Good question. This recipe uses a full braise, more like what you'd do in the oven. So you're submerging the brisket in a mixture of beef broth, apple cider vinegar, Worcestershire sauce, letting it simmer low and slow until it's practically melting.
Man, that sounds incredible. I can almost taste it. The savory broth, the tangy vinegar.
It's a winning combo for sure. And the apple cider vinegar, it does more than just add tang. Helps break down those tough proteins, making the brisket extra tender.
So it's like science you can taste.
Exactly.
Okay, while that brisket is braising away, filling our kitchens with that amazing smoky aroma, maybe something a bit more manageable for, say, a weeknight dinner.
Definitely. How about those smoked chicken wings? Those are a real crowd pleaser.
Agreed. I noticed this recipe uses a 2-step cooking process. Smoke them first, then crank up the heat to crisp them up. Why the 2 steps?
It's all about getting that perfect balance. So the low and slow smoke really lets that smoky flavor penetrate the meat. And then that blast of high heat gives you that crispy golden brown skin.
Oh man, I can picture it now. Glistening with glaze.
Ah, yes, the glaze. Melted butter, hot sauce, tossed on right at the end. You can use whatever hot sauce you like, of course.
Ooh, I might have to get a little adventurous with that. Maybe some habanero for a kick.
Go for it.
Okay, wings are definitely on the menu this week. But let's move on to something a little more, shall we say, refined. That smoked salmon caught my eye.
Oh yeah, the smoked salmon. That one's surprisingly simple, actually. Proof that sometimes less is more. Just season it with a good rub and let the smoke work its magic.
Low and slow again.
You got it. Salmon's delicate, so you don't want to overcook it. This recipe recommends 180 degrees, just enough for that smoky flavor to infuse the fish without drying it out.
I'm already imagining a smoked salmon platter with all the fixings.
No, you gotta have the capers, the red onion, and definitely don't skimp on the fresh dill. It really brightens up the whole thing.
Sounds amazing. Okay, we've got brisket, wings, and salmon so far.
Yeah.
What's next on our smoky adventure?
How about some smoked pulled pork? That's a classic for a reason. So versatile, feeds a crowd, and that tender, smoky flavor. Who doesn't love pulled pork?
Preaching to the choir. Now, I noticed this recipe uses yellow mustard as a binder for the rub. Never seen that before. What's the deal with that?
It's actually a bit of a secret weapon. So the mustard helps create a beautiful bark on the pork, that caramelized crust.
Wait, back up. Bark. I need to know more about this bark.
The bark is like where the flavor magic happens. It's a chemical reaction, the Maillard reaction, when the proteins and sugars are exposed to heat. And the mustard, well, it helps that reaction along, creates a deeper flavor, and it makes the rub stick better.
Wow, science. Okay, so we've got our mustard-slathered pork shoulder ready for the Traeger. What's the secret to getting that fall-off-the-bone texture?
Patience. It takes time. This recipe suggests smoking it at 225 degrees for 8 to 10 hours, or until it hits 165 degrees internally. Then you braise it low and slow in a mix of apple juice, apple cider vinegar, brown sugar, soy sauce, until it reaches 204 degrees.
That braising liquid sounds incredible. What does it do to the pork?
Oh, it infuses it with so much flavor. The sweetness from the apple juice, the tang from the vinegar, the brown sugar caramelizes, and then the soy sauce adds that savory depth. It's really something special.
Okay, you've sold me. Pulled pork this weekend it is. But we've got to keep moving. What about those smoked baby back ribs?
Ah, ribs. Now we're talking. This recipe uses a wrapping technique, which speeds things up and guarantees those ribs are fall off the bone tender.
When you say wrapping, what do you mean exactly?
So after smoking the ribs for 3 hours, you wrap them up tight in foil with a mix of apple juice, brown sugar, and honey. It steams them, breaks down the connective tissue, just makes them melt in your mouth.
So is the wrapping a must-do? Or could you skip it if you have the time?
You can skip it if you're a purist and really want that long, slow smoke. But the wrap does help speed things up.
Makes sense. And what about sauce? They recommend barbecue sauce, but could you use something else?
Go wild. Ribs are your blank canvas. Try a different barbecue sauce, maybe something spicy or a dry rub, even a sweet glaze.
I'm sensing a theme here. Low and slow, patience, and a willingness to play around in the kitchen.
Exactly. That's the Traeger way. Now, are you ready for a curveball?
Hit me.
Smoked mac and cheese.
Okay, you have my attention. But how do you even smoke mac and cheese?
It's surprisingly easy. You just make your mac and cheese like you usually would on the stovetop. Then transfer it to a baking dish, top it with breadcrumbs, and smoke it low and slow around 225 degrees for about an hour.
So we're not actually cooking the mac and cheese on the Traeger, just infusing it with that smoky flavor.
Exactly. And your wood choice here is important. You want something mild like pecan or hickory, so it doesn't overpower that cheesy goodness, just complements it.
My mind is blown. This could be a game changer.
Right.
Okay, we've got one last recipe to cover before I run off to my kitchen and fire up the Traeger. And it's a doozy. Smoked apple pie.
This one is a real showstopper.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Why smoke an apple pie?
Picture this. Warm apple pie, flaky crust, cinnamon-spiced filling, and then this subtle hint of smoke that just weaves its way through. It adds a whole other dimension of flavor.
Okay, you're making it sound pretty good. So do you just bake the whole pie on the Traeger?
Yep, just like you would in the oven. Assemble the pie, pop it on the Traeger at 350 degrees, bake until the crust is golden and the filling is bubbling.
And what about the wood? Something fruity, maybe?
You could use applewood, definitely, or cherry. But you could also get a little bolder and try hickory or pecan for a more pronounced smoky flavor. It's really up to you.
Okay, before I make a run for my Traeger, what are some key things to keep in mind for all of these recipes?
Well, the biggest one is patience. Smoking is all about low and slow, letting those flavors develop over time. Don't be afraid to play around with different wood pellets, rubs, sauces. Find what you like.
It's all about the journey, right?
Exactly.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of Traeger recipes.
Oh, we're just getting started.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're still knee-deep in smoky deliciousness, exploring those 7 must-try Traeger recipes from Cooker Diary.
And we're not done yet.
Not even close.
Ah.
But before we jump back into those mouth-watering recipes,
Right.
we got to talk about one of the most important things for any Traeger chef: wood pellets.
Ah, yes, the wood pellets. It's not just fuel, it's where the flavor comes from. It's like an artist's palette, but for smoke.
Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me. What are the things to keep in mind when choosing wood pellets for different recipes?
Well, you've got so many different types of wood, and they all have their own unique flavor profile. Some are mild and sweet, others bold and smoky. It all depends on what you're going for.
Makes sense. So give me some examples.
Okay, so let's say you're smoking fish, like that smoked salmon we talked about. You might want to go with alder.
Alder.
Yeah, alder. It's got a delicate, slightly sweet smoke that won't overpower the fish. It's a good choice for poultry, too.
Okay, alder for salmon. Got it. So what about for something like that smoked pulled pork?
Now, for pulled pork, you might want something a little stronger, like hickory.
Hickory?
Yep, hickory. It's got that classic barbecue smokiness, almost like bacon. Pairs really well with pork.
Hickory for pork. Writing it down. What about beef, like that smoked brisket?
Brisket's interesting because you have a couple of good options. Oak is a classic choice. It's medium-bodied, complements the beef without overpowering it.
Oak for brisket. Got it. Any other options?
Well, if you really want to amp up the smoke flavor, you could go with mesquite. It's bold, earthy. Not for everyone, but it can make an amazing brisket.
Mesquite. Okay, I'm learning so much. So we've got alder, hickory, oak, mesquite. What about chicken? What would you use for those smoked chicken wings?
Fruit woods are great for chicken. Applewood is a popular choice, nice and wild, with a little sweetness.
Applewood for chicken. Got it. So it really is like an art form, picking the right wood.
It is, and you can even get creative and mix different types of wood pellets together to create your own custom blends.
Whoa, now we're really getting fancy. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of blends are we talking about?
Well, you could try hickory and cherry for ribs. That gives you smoky and sweet. Or maybe pecan and maple for poultry. Nice and nutty with a touch of sweetness.
My mind is officially blown. I never realized how much thought goes into choosing the right wood pellets.
It makes a huge difference in the final flavor.
Okay, I'm sold. What else do we need to know to become Traeger masters?
Well, once you've mastered the art of wood selection, the next thing to focus on is temperature control.
Right, because smoking is all about low and slow.
Exactly. You want to maintain a nice, consistent temperature throughout the cooking process. That's the key to getting those tender, juicy results.
I've definitely learned that the hard way. A few temperature swings can really mess things up.
It happens to the best of us. But don't worry, with a good thermometer, you can keep things under control.
So what temperature are we aiming for with these recipes?
Most of them call for somewhere between 225 and 250 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's it.
Yep. Low and slow, remember. That gives the smoke time to work its magic, break down the connective tissue, and infuse all those delicious flavors.
Low and slow.
Got it.
So I set the temperature and just let it go.
You'll want to keep an eye on it, make adjustments if needed. And here's a pro tip. Get yourself a good digital thermometer with dual probes.
Dual probes. What's that?
It lets you monitor both the internal temperature of the meat and the ambient temperature inside the smoker.
Ah, so you can really keep track of everything. Dual probes. Noted. What other tips do you have? I'm ready to soak it all in.
Here's a common mistake people make. Opening the smoker lid too often.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that. I just want to see what's happening in there.
I know, it's tempting, but every time you open the lid, you're letting out heat and smoke, which can mess with the temperature and make the cooking time longer.
Right, right. Less peeking, more patience.
Exactly. Now, are you ready for some more advanced techniques?
Hit me with them.
Okay, so one technique that can really up your smoking game is spritzing.
Spritzing. What's that?
You basically spray the meat with a liquid during the cooking process, helps keep it moist, and adds another layer of flavor.
What kind of liquid are we talking about?
Usually a mix of water, apple juice, or vinegar. You can get creative with it. Just use a spray bottle with a fine mist so you're not soaking the meat.
Fine mist. Got it. When do you spritz?
You can start after the first hour or two, and then just spritz every hour or so until the meat's done.
Okay, spritzing, check. Any other tricks?
Another great one is using a water pan.
A water pan, what does that do?
It helps regulate the humidity inside the smoker, which can prevent the meat from drying out and create a more stable cooking environment.
So it's like a humidifier for the smoker.
Exactly. And you can even get creative and add aromatics to the water, like herbs or spices.
Ooh, I like that.
Mm.
So we've got spritzing, we've got water pans. Anything else?
One last tip, and it's a big one, resting the meat.
Resting the meat, like
Yeah.
letting it take a nap.
Pretty much. After you take the meat off the smoker, let it rest for a while before you cut into it.
Why is that so important?
It allows the juices to redistribute throughout the meat so it's more tender and flavorful.
So we're not just being lazy when we let it rest.
Exactly. For larger cuts like brisket or pulled pork, I recommend resting for at least an hour, maybe even longer.
Okay, resting, check. I'm feeling like a Traeger expert already.
You're well on your way. Remember, the most important thing is to have fun and experiment. Don't be afraid to try new things and see what works for you.
I love that.
Now, are you ready to get back to those recipes?
Lead the way.
Okay, let's pick up where we left off with those smoked baby back ribs. Those smoked baby back ribs we were talking about, the ones we wrapped up all cozy in foil.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about them.
Oh,
All fall off the bone, slathered in sauce.
Well, let's talk sauce for a second. The recipe suggests a classic barbecue sauce, but like we said before, you can really get creative with ribs.
True. I was thinking maybe a spicy chipotle sauce or a tangy mustard-based sauce.
Gee, You're getting it. And don't be afraid to try making your own sauce. It's easier than you might think.
Ooh, a homemade barbecue sauce. I like the sound of that.
And don't forget about the rubs. The recipe uses a basic rub, but you can experiment there too.
Right. Paprika, brown sugar, garlic powder, onion powder.
Exactly. But you can add all sorts of things, different spices, herbs, maybe a touch of sweetness. It's all about finding what you like.
So it's like with the wood pellets. It's all about personalizing it.
Exactly. And balance, of course. You want the flavors to complement each other, not overpower the meat.
Balance. Got it. Okay, so we've covered sauces, rubs, wood pellets, temperatures. What else?
Oh, I've got one more trick for you. Especially for those bigger cuts of meat, like brisket or pork shoulder. It's called the fat cap up method.
Fat cap up? What's that?
So you put the meat on the smoker grate with the fat cap facing up. That way, as it cooks, the fat melts and drips down over the meat. Keeps it nice and moist.
So it's like self-basting.
Exactly.
Genius. Okay, I can't wait to try that. But before we wrap up, we got to talk about that smoked mac and cheese.
Oh, yes. That one's a game changer. I'm telling you, the smoke just adds something special to mac and cheese.
I'm ready to be a believer. We talked about the wood selection before, right?
Right. Something mild, like pecan or hickory.
So we're not smoking the mac and cheese, just infusing it with that smoky flavor.
You got it.
I need to try this. Okay, one last recipe. The grand finale. Smoked apple pie. I'm still a little skeptical about this one.
Trust me, it works. It's like taking apple pie to a whole other level.
So paint me a picture. What does it taste like?
Imagine warm apple pie, that flaky crust, the cinnamon-spiced filling. But then there's this subtle hint of smoke. Just a whisper. It adds a whole other dimension of flavor.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So how do we do it?
Pretty simple, actually. Make your pie like you normally would, then bake it on the Traeger instead of the oven.
What kind of wood do you recommend?
If you want to keep it classic, applewood is a great choice. But you could also try cherry wood or pecan for something a little different.
Cherry wood pecan.
Okay.
Okay, I'm writing it all down. This has been an amazing journey through the world of Traeger recipes.
It really has. I hope you're feeling inspired to fire up your smoker and get cooking.
Oh, definitely. What would you say is the biggest takeaway for our listeners today?
Don't be afraid to experiment. Try different wood pellets, different rubs, different sauces. Make it your own.
Well said. So fire up those Traegers, everyone. And don't forget to check out Cooker Diary for all the recipes we talked about today.
And share pictures of your creations on social media. We'd love to see what you come up with.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Happy smoking, everyone.
Until next time.